Children, I welcome you in today's English class. In previous video, we had started the chapter If I Were You. As I have already told you, it's a play where Gerard, one character we got to know, and one is the intruder. Now both of them were interacting. Intruder who came in Gerard's house without permission, but Gerard was very cool, calm. Then he said, right now you are looking very composed and calm, but it's not going to continue for all. So let's start where we left in the previous one. Gerard, anything you like. I know all the answers, but before we begin, I should like to change my position. You may be comfortable, but I am not. Gerard says that the intruder could ask him anything, but before that he wanted to sit comfortably. Intruder, sit down there and no funny business. Motions to a chair and seats himself on the divan by the back. Now then, we will have a nice little talk about yourself. The intruder commands Gerard to sit on the chair and sits on the divan. He wants to talk about the two of them. Gerard, at last a sympathetic audience. I will tell you the story of my life. How as a child I was stolen by the gypsies, and why at the age of 32 I find myself in my lonely access cottage. How? Gypsies are nomdas. They kept on moving here and there, and generally they used to steal children or for some silly and small trivial purposes. Gerard says that finally he has a person who is concerned about him and wants to know about his past. He adds that he would tell him about his life, how as a child he was stolen by a group of gypsies. He adds that he would tell him about his life, how he was stolen by the group of gypsies, nomdas, and why at the age of 32 years was he living all alone at this small cottage in Axis. By saying this, he developed an air of suspense around him. Intruder said, "Keep it to yourself and just answer my questions. You live here alone. Well, do you?" The intruder was not intrigued by Gerard's words. He wanted answers to his sets of questions and did not want to hear to what Gerard had to say. He asked if Gerard lived here alone. Gerard, I am sorry, I thought you were telling me, not asking me. A question of inflection, your voice is unfamiliar. Inflection meaning a change in the modulation of voice. Gerard says that the way in which the intruder spoke made him feel that he was telling him that he lived alone rather than asking him. If he did live alone, he added that the intruder's voice was not familiar to imply that he wanted to know about him. Intruder, with emphasis, do you live here alone? The intruder repeated his question with emphasis and asked Gerard if he lived there alone. Gerard, and if I don't answer? Gerard asked what would the intruder do if he did not answer his question. The intruder said, "You have got enough sense not to want to get hurt." The intruder wanted Gerard that if he did not want any harm, then he should obey his orders. Gerard, I think good sense is shown more in the ability to avoid pain than in the mere desire to do so. What do you think, Mr.? Because he did not know the name, that's why. Gerard spoke intelligently and replied that his good sense reflected in his ability to avoid pain than the mere desire to avoid it. He asked the intruder about his opinion and addressed him as Mr. to indicate that he wanted to know his name. Intruder, never mind my name. I like yours better, Mr. Gerard. What are your Christian names? The intruder replied that he need not to know his name, and on the other hand asked Gerard his Christian name, that is, the name he was given when he was baptized in the church. Vaillant Charles. Gerard replied that his Christian name was Vaillant Charles. Do you run a car? The intruder's next question was if Gerard had a car. Gerard, no. Gerard replied negatively. Intruder, that's a lie. You are not dealing with a fool. I am as smart as you and smarter, and I know you run a car. Better be careful, wise guy. The intruder said that Gerard was lying. He said that he was not foolish. He was smarter than him and knew that he had a car. He warned Gerard not to befool him. Gerard, are you American or is that merely a clever imitation? Gerard asked the intruder if he was really an American or was he copying American accent. Intruder, listen, this gun's no toy. I can hurt you without killing you and still get my answers. The intruder got angry and said that his gun was not a toy. He could harm Gerard and still would get a reply to his questions. Gerard, of course, if you put it like that, I will be glad to assist you. I do possess a car and it's in the garage round the corner. Gerard showed that he got scared and said that he would be happy to help the intruder. He accepted that he had a car and said that it was in garage. Gerard, intruder, that's better. Do people often come out here? Then the intruder asked whether the place was frequented by many people. Gerard, very rarely. Surprisingly, few people take the trouble to visit me. They are the baker and the greengrocer, of course. And then there's the milkman, quite charming, but no one so interesting as yourself. Gerard replied that he rarely had any visitors. He added that very few people underwent the trouble of visiting him, other than the baker, greengrocer, and the milkman. No one else bothered to visit him. Intruder, I happen to know that you never see trade people. The intruder said that he had come to know that Gerard did not mean trade people. Gerard, you seems to have taken a considerable amount of trouble since you know so much about me. Won't you say something about yourself? You have been so modest. Gerard commented that the intruder had gone through a lot of trouble to gain information about him. He added that as the intruder knew a lot about him, he should disclose some details about himself too. He added that the intruder had been reserved and had not talked much about himself. Intruder, I could tell you plenty. You think you aren't smart, but I am the top of the class round here. I have got brains and I use them. That's how I have got where I have. The intruder said that he had a lot to talk about himself. In case Gerard thought himself to be smart, he was smarter. He had brains and used his intelligence to achieve things. Thank you, everyone.